Today on Reclaiming the Gentleman, I want to open up a conversation about parts of all of us that are essential to our fulfillment, to our satisfaction in life, but that you might not expect to hear about on a podcast with this title. I'm talking about boldness, firmness, and directness. These kinds of qualities can feel loaded. And for many men, myself included, things like boldness were modeled in ways that felt violent, unsafe, or overpowering while we were growing up. So we learned in time to avoid them or to disown them. And there are many men out there who walk through the world afraid to touch into these qualities, afraid to own them inside of themselves. But here's the paradox. When we repress our boldness and our power, that energy doesn't just disappear. It leaks out sideways, usually unconsciously, and often in ways that hurt the people we care most about. I've seen this in my own life. The more I push down my directness, right, my ability to speak clearly, the more I felt myself disconnected from my partner, from my purpose, and really from any kind of feeling of vitality in my life. And I think while modern culture often celebrates the man who softens his edges and resigns his power in the name of being more evolved or safe to be around, I want to offer through this episode an alternative. Because resignation is not the same as conscious gentleness, right? Resigning our power does not mean we're choosing gentleness. And amputating parts of ourselves to make others more comfortable isn't harmless. It's costly. And not just for us, but for the people that we love, the people that want our care. Many of us were taught that to be loved, we have to dim our intensity. To be chosen, we have to stay quiet. To be good, we have to stay small. Today, I want to explore what it means to reclaim these parts of ourselves, not in the name of dominance, but in service of deeper connection, more authentic and accessible leadership, and a more self-led, vibrant way of being, both with ourselves and in union. And in this episode, I'm going to share a bit of my personal story, and we'll look together at why boldness and firmness and directness, when consciously cultivated, might be the missing piece in so many modern men's path. Stay with me. This is Reclaiming the Gentleman. I'm Dave Lashansky. So when I was a boy, I remember watching closely all the ways that my dad upset my mom and my two older sisters. I remember seeing him take up the whole kitchen table when he sat down to read in the morning. I remember him controlling the dynamic of conversations. I remember listening to him on phone calls boasting about his abilities and capacities and things that other people weren't as good at as him. And I remember thinking how easy it'd be to just not do those things when I grew up. I remember thinking how clear the hurt he was causing was, and to be mindful about how much space I took up. By watching him, I learned to be aware of how I spoke about myself and my abilities. I learned to make excessive room for others, especially for women, so that they felt safe, so that they felt like they could unfurl and take up more space themselves. And I remember even as a boy, this seemed really simple to me. It was obvious if you watched the impact that my father was having on the women around him. And I'm not sharing this to dunk on my dad. He was certainly doing his best. and his actions weren't malicious or ever physically harmful. He is a wonderfully loving father in many, many ways. And he was doing his best based on what he got from his father too, which is how these things usually work. But he was also looking back on it, really brilliantly demonstrating what's taken place for generations and generations. This phenomenon of a man creating harm he does not recognize. You can call this being unintegrated. You can call it what you want. You can call it patriarchy. But it was clear that he did not see what he was doing. And I, in turn, by watching this mess, by watching him miss this, mess up his marriage, estrange himself from the women in his life, I completed that cycle, the next generational cycle, by moving in the exact opposite direction. I became falsely humble, uncomfortable with any recognition or acknowledgement of me. I became feverishly aware of every single square inch I took up physically and even energetically. And I'd walk into rooms with every intention to minimize that space. I would apologize to chairs if I bumped into them. I'm not joking. I learned to do what so many women for generations have learned to do, because the effect of being bold and direct and wielding my power the way that my father did, so unaware and to me obviously harmful to everyone around it, was just not an option. So when I started to act the ways I watched my sisters and my mother act to cope, when I watched the ways women celebrated each other for their softness and their openness, when I saw what happened in those spaces, when I saw the celebration for concern and community or the family unit being held up over one another, I also felt special for being a male in those places, a boy and a young man. I felt special for understanding that language. I felt like I had an in because I saw the power in this way of being, especially around women. And it was intoxicating. I remember playing on the girls' teams as a young boy at recess when it was girls versus boys and feeling special because I didn't care. No other boy would do that. I remember being celebrated throughout my entire life for all these gentle qualities in me that made women feel safe and open around me. And I remember feeling like I was accessing some hidden power when I was able to have deeper conversations with women, to hold space, to be in that emotional ether with them. The safety that I created in all of my relationships, not just women, was profound. I felt like I could hold space for everyone and everything, like I had a superpower. And the only way that I could describe that feeling, the access that that ability afforded me, was power. And I want to be clear because I talk a lot about power on this podcast. I use that word a lot, but there's a difference between the kind of power I want to help people cultivate and the power that I'm talking about here. The power that I love and I help men and women and couples reclaim is all about agency. It's about choice and intention and clarity. That kind of power is the power to create from self-knowledge, from self-leadership. It is the power of creation. But the power that I felt when I learned to use my softness and my smallness to connect with people was very different. This was a power of manipulation. It was a power over. It was not about mutual creation when performed in relationship, especially intimate relationship, romantic relationship. This was about fulfilling some identity of me as soft and good. It was a way for me to make myself look and feel better than other men because I got women in a way others never could. I wasn't brawny, but I was soft. I wasn't attractive because I was a manly man. I was attractive because I got them. And all of that was a manipulation to fulfill my ego, to make me feel safe, to get me the love that I wanted but didn't know how to access without resigning what I imagined a man to be, without resigning the qualities I ascribed to everything my father did growing up. This wasn't healthy, but it was the result of my inner fear about being bold and direct and clear and decisive, right? All of those things that I watched my father do that I told myself I was better because I didn't do. This was my way of being a nice guy, of being an evolved man. But it wasn't authentic, and it came at a profound inner cost. Because by trying to be the perfect man, the man who innately understands women, who not only can hold a purse without throwing a fit, but could hold everything without asking for anything in return. By trying to be that man, I never learned who I was. I never got to know me because I was hiding behind an image of who I thought I should be. I was trying to mold myself into the perfect man in the eyes of others, especially women. And in doing that, I lost connection with myself. I was so far gone that questions like, what do I really want, were impossible for me to answer. And I know after working and sitting in circle with hundreds of men and boys that I'm not alone in this story. That in some way or another, many, many adult men today witnessed this power of fulfilling this identity of being soft and gentle, being manipulatively soft and gentle, and dulling any of the hard edges we might have so that we can have stronger connection with other people, so that we can fulfill that identity, that role of the good guy. A lot of men like me learn growing up that our general nature is an assault on the world and that it has to be softened and blunted to make others feel better and safe around us. That it would be impossible to be a good man, to be someone who's emotionally mature or safe, if we didn't dull those edges. And this was our act of service, right? So that we weren't perpetuating the pain that so many violent men before us have. And this is a costly story. And I want to offer a new vision for all of us, because I know we men do this to ourselves. But I also have witnessed many women celebrate the kinds of things that often shame men into this kind of diminished behavior. And it doesn't have to be this way. But we have to see these things for what they are, and we have to make conscious choices in order to do it. Because while it's nice to be with men that are capable of softness, when we're reaching for deeper intimacy, when we're called into our depths in our love and our relationships, if we've softened our edges to make other people comfortable without ever coming to understand them ourselves, we end up in moments that should be peak experiences floundering, struggling, lost, which can be one of the most devastating things in the world. When you are witnessing someone else in a moment that should be loving and beautiful, holding your child, witnessing your beautiful partner in sex, if we can't access ourselves, if we don't have access to who we are, to these parts of us that we learn to blunt and soften, those moments aren't going to be fulfilling or satisfying in the way that they can be. Because if we spend all our time curating who we are to become generally palatable to people, we lose access to that core of what makes connection and sex and love and intimacy real and vital and beautiful. Right? Being a man that can hold a purse without having a fit can also be the man that protects and defends, that strikes out boldly into the world and takes risks, who knows and asks for what he wants. Right? It's not about being one or the other. It's actually about cultivating and integrating our own beautiful wholeness, right? This is what people mean when they talk about authenticity. There's no right way of being a man or anyone, but there are honest and dishonest ones. And I think it's important that we really start to question whether the ways we've learned to cultivate connection and intimacy is honest, is real, or if it's a manipulation, if it's a tactic to get love. So how do we begin? How do we learn to strike out toward that more honest way of being? I will say that it starts with our bodies. So much of the work that I did to reclaim my boldness, my firmness, my directness in my relationship and in my life started with me actually attuning to what is the energy of the emotion in my body, to what is happening inside of me. Because to become that soft, dulled man that I became, I had to cut off my connection to myself. And so when I started focusing in on my body, it was the beginning that changed everything. This is why the breath can be so revolutionary, because the breath is the doorway back into yourself. It is the bold truth flowing in and out of you in every single moment that you cannot hide and you cannot erase. And when you pay attention to it, your breath can be a trailhead back to yourself, to the truth of who you are. Right? Our breath guides us back into our bodies, where this work of reclaiming our edges and our boldness and our true nature has to begin. And when I embarked on this work, I realized that the ways I was making myself small for the world was making me hide in my relationships. I realized that when I reconnected to my edges, to those parts of me that weren't only soft and gentle, when I accessed the part of me that was willing to declare the reality of who I am and what I care about and what I'm willing and wanting to fight for in my life, when I reconnected with those parts of me, I stopped fearing and trying to manipulate my partner, my partner's emotions, and the people around me. I stopped delegating all choice to what other people were feeling or needing. And I took risks that actually made the woman that I loved feel more loved and more special and more seen. It allowed me to strike into conversation with other people with a greater depth than I was accessing before. It allowed me to be someone who created real, authentic connection, not a one-sided manipulation where one person feels like they can just pour out emotionally and the other person doesn't really exist. And I think a lot of men, not just in romance, but in all kinds of relationships, are in that kind of dynamic with people, and often without knowing it. And again, it doesn't have to be this way. This is what happens when we stop letting everything we pretend don't exist in us. That boldness, that firmness, that power inside of us that we relinquish to try to be soft and gentle allows us to choose who and how we want to be. And this is the choice. This is the power that leads us deeper into love and connection and intimacy, right? This boldness makes us capable of the most beautiful and profound kinds of intimacy that I think exist in the world. And it only comes when we can reclaim the boldness that we relinquish to try to make the world around us feel safer, to try to make us feel more loved in it and therefore safer ourselves, right? The parts of you that you fear are the gateway to your fulfillment. The parts of you that you have relinquished or cut off or pretend aren't there are the gateway to feeling satisfied and feeling connected in the ways that you're trying to do anyway. So my call to you as we close this episode is this. If you find yourself trying to please others all the time, trying to fit some mold or some identity that makes others feel comfortable, don't wait. Don't hold yourself accountable to this perfect image of a person who's never upset someone else, that can hold everything, or that's always safe. Be a human being. This is the only way we're ever going to change our world for the better. Avoiding our humanity, the human parts of us, is only delaying the process for all of us. So initiate yourself. Follow your breath toward your desire, toward what you want, toward what you feel in your bones that you cannot live without bringing into being, without creating. And find a group of men, cultivate friendships. Find love that will support and hold you accountable in being who you are. And if any of that feels too hard to do alone, that's exactly what great therapists and coaches are here for. Thank you for listening to this episode of Reclaiming the Gentle Man. We are just over a month away from the door opening to Reclaiming the Gentle Man, the 21-day men's program. And if what you're hearing in this podcast is striking a chord in you, sign up for the waitlist. Go to davelshansky.com, scroll to the bottom, and set your intention to join by sending your email. I do not send a lot of emails, but I do send important ones. And if you're waiting for something in your life to change, this might be it. I would love to support you in this journey of reclaiming your gentleness, of re-accessing your true power. It is all part of living a more satisfying and fulfilling and vibrant and connected life. And that journey never stops. This podcast is produced by me through my company, David Benjamin Sound, LLC. You can visit us at davidbenjaminsound.com. Please send in your ratings and reviews for the podcast. It makes a huge difference for helping other people find this work. And if you know someone who could benefit from it, share this episode or another one. That really helps. I wish you great courage in reconnecting with all parts of you. I'll be back in a week.